The first time I saw him, he wasn't standing in the woods. He was standing in the reflection behind me. Part 1. The dare that started everything. The first time I saw him, he wasn't standing in the woods. He was standing in the reflection behind me. My name is Evan Mercer, and if this video is still up by the time you're watching it, then either I made it out, or uploading it was the last normal thing I ever did. I grew up in Black Ridge, Pennsylvania, the kind of town where everybody waves at each other from pickup trucks, where Friday night football still matters, where the diner opens before sunrise for mill workers and truckers, and where the woods start just far enough behind the last row of houses that parents can pretend they aren't there. Black Ridge was the kind of place where people said nothing ever happened, which I used to think was a good thing. Now I think it just meant people got better at not talking. I was 17 that fall. Senior year. The kind of age where you feel old enough to be taken seriously and young enough to still do stupid things for attention. I had a cheap mirrorless camera, a half-dead channel on YouTube, and exactly 3 friends willing to wander into bad ideas with me if it meant maybe getting enough views to matter. There was Noah Briggs, who acted fearless even when his voice shook. He wore varsity jackets like he'd been born in one, and treated every bad situation like it was secretly a competition. There was Kylie Soto, smarter than any of us. The only one who ever thought ahead. The one who kept saying that editing and pacing mattered more than jump scares. And there was Mason Hale, who laughed at everything, mostly because silence made him uncomfortable. We didn't start with Slender Man because we believed in Slender Man. We started with Slender Man because fear gets clicks. That's the truth. October was coming. The algorithm loved creepy content. And Noah had heard from his cousin that there was an abandoned summer camp past Miller's Creek, out near the state game lands, where local kids used to dare each other to spend the night. Supposedly people have been leaving printouts there for years, old forum posts, fake missing posters, sketches, symbols carved into wood, Slender Man stuff. Creepypasta leftovers. Meme horror, internet junk with pine needles stuck to it. Perfect. That Saturday, after the Black Ridge Wolves lost a home game by 3 points and the whole town seemed to go quiet with disappointment, we met in a parking lot behind a gas station off Route 11. It was one of those cold Pennsylvania nights where your breath looked white under the canopy lights and every car radio in the lot sounded like a different world. Noah brought flashlights. Kylie brought backup batteries, Mason brought energy drinks and 0 useful skills. I brought the camera and the certainty that this would make a great opening sequence. Just don't fake anything too hard, Kylie said as she slammed the trunk shut. If it feels fake, people click off. It is fake, Noah said. That's the point. I remember laughing. I remember thinking the whole thing felt cinematic already. For teenagers under gas station lights, empty road, dark tree line in the distance. The kind of opening shot you'd storyboard if you were trying to sell small-town horror in America to a streaming service. The road to the camp was half gravel, half mud, and definitely not meant for Noah's truck. The deeper we drove, the worse the signal got. Houses disappeared. Mailboxes disappeared. Streetlights disappeared. Eventually, it was just us, the headlights, and long walls of trees on both sides. The beams flashed across trunks so fast it felt like the woods were blinking. You guys know this was probably all made up by some dude on Reddit, right? Mason said. Good, I said from the back seat, filming over Noah's shoulder. Then nothing bad can happen. Kylie turned around and looked directly into the lens. That's always what people say 10 minutes before something bad happens. That line stayed in the edit. The gate to the camp had collapsed years ago. One rusted sign still hung crooked from one hinge, swinging just enough to squeak when the wind shifted. The paint had peeled so badly you could barely make out the words, Camp Cedar Glen. We parked outside the entrance and kept the truck lights on behind us for a minute longer than we needed to. None of us said it, but walking away from the only working thing in sight felt wrong immediately. Inside the property, the camp looked like it had been abandoned in layers. Not all at once. One cabin at a time, one summer at a time. Like adults had kept trying to save it until eventually they got tired of pretending it could still be used. There were picnic tables split through the middle, a rec hall with half its roof caved in, basketball hoops without nets, and a little chapel with no door. The woods crowded so tightly around the paths it felt less like a camp in a forest and more like the forest had already won. I filmed everything. The bunks with mold on the frames, the mess hall windows busted out from the inside, the old craft cabin with paper stars still stuck to one wall, the hand-painted trail signs pointing toward places that no longer existed. Noah kept playing to the camera, kicking open doors, talking in a fake documentary voice. Mason kept making jokes that died too quickly in the dark. Kylie kept checking behind us. At first, the weirdest part wasn't supernatural. It was how quiet it was. No crickets. No owls. No rustling. Just our own shoes on dirt and the occasional creak of old wood. Even the wind seemed to move above the trees instead of through them. We found the first symbol on the back wall of the rec hall. It was spray-painted in black, about shoulder height, like someone had stood there carefully and taken their time. A circle crossed by several lines branching downward. It looked handmade, obsessive, familiar in the way internet horror always does when it's already been copied 1,000 times. Mason grinned, there it is. Thumbnail material, but then Kylie raised her flashlight and found more. One carved into the wood beside a window, one scratched into a tabletop, one on the underside of a door, not random graffiti, repeated, intentional. That's kind of a lot, she said. Noah shrugged. Local kids, maybe that should have been the point where we left. Instead, it made the video better. The cabin we found at the far end of the property wasn't on any of the old camp maps. At least not any I saw later. It sat beyond the main trail, tucked behind a stand of pines where the beam of your flashlight never seemed to land quite right. Smaller than the others. Lower to the ground, almost hidden. The door was already open. The inside smelled like wet wood and old paper. I swung the camera slowly across the room and saw printouts taped to the walls. Not one or two. Dozens. Photos of trees, stretched figures in the background of playgrounds and schoolyards. Forum posts with usernames blacked out. Drawings in crayon and pencil, some looked like they'd been made by children. Some, by adults, trying to draw like children, all of them circling the same shape, a tall man with no face. Mason stopped laughing. Noah said, "Okay, that's actually pretty good." Then, Kylie found the photographs. They were stuffed in a shoebox beneath a broken chair. Old Polaroids, their edges yellowing, the chemical colors faded almost gray. Most showed the camp when it was still open, kids in matching t-shirts, counselors on a dock, a campfire at night, birthday sheet cake on folding tables. And in 3 of them, if you looked past the kids and into the trees, there was someone standing there. Too tall, too still, too narrow. No face visible, just the suggestion of one. A pale oval, where a face should have been. Noah took one of the photos and laughed. But it came out weak. Old fake. Someone planted these. Then why are they old? Kylie asked. No one answered. I should tell you that memory gets slippery after a while. Fear edits things. It cuts some parts short and stretches others until they feel endless. But one thing I remember clearly is this. None of us wanted to be the first person to suggest leaving, because that would mean admitting the room had gotten to us. So instead I kept filming. That's when the camera glitched for the first time. The screen flashed white. The audio spiked with static. Then it came back. Just a second, maybe less. Noah looked at me. Battery. Full. You sure? I checked. Still nearly full. Kylie was staring past us, toward the open doorway. Did one of you move that? Outside the cabin, hanging from a branch that definitely hadn't been occupied when we walked in, was a strip of red fabric tied in a knot. It swung slowly. No wind. Just moving. Noah marched out first, because of course he did. Mason followed because he didn't want to look scared. I followed because the camera gave me a reason not to think. Kylie came last. We scanned the trees with our flashlights. Nothing. Just trunks and needles and darkness layered so thick it looked solid. Then Mason said, quietly for once, "Did you guys hear that?" We all froze. At first I thought it was static bleeding from my camera speaker. Then I realized it was coming from farther out in the woods. Not a voice. Not an animal. Something like a long radio hiss mixed with tree branches rubbing together. Thin, mechanical, distant. The kind of sound that didn't seem natural because it didn't belong to one place. It was everywhere and nowhere at once. Noah called out, "Funny, real funny." Nothing answered. Then, from somewhere much deeper in the trees, came 3 sharp knocks. Not on a door. Not on wood right next to us. Far away, but deliberate. Free. Then silence. We left after that, though nobody said we were running. We said we had enough footage. We said we'd come back in daylight. We said the night shots were probably unusable anyway, but once we got back to the truck, none of us took time to look behind us before locking the doors. The ride back was quieter, not dramatic movie quiet, just the awkward, creeping quiet of people who had all felt something they were trying not to name. The kind of silence broken only by turn signals, heater fans, and the occasional forced joke that didn't land. When Noah dropped me off, my mom's porch light was on. Normal suburban house, leaf-blown driveway. Pumpkin someone had forgotten to throw out from the year before still sitting cracked beside the garage. Safe. I remember thinking how stupid it felt that my hands were still shaking. In my room, I dumped the footage onto my laptop around 1 in the morning. I expected bad lighting, shaky movement, too much talking over each other. What I didn't expect was the missing 4 minutes. One continuous section, from inside the hidden cabin, was corrupted. Black screen, static. Audio broken into digital choking sounds. At first I thought the file was damaged. Then I scrubbed frame by frame. And in the middle of the distortion, for just a handful of frames, there was an image none of us had seen while we were there. The cabin doorway. All of us inside. And behind Kylie, standing just outside in the trees, was a figure so tall its head nearly touched the top of the frame. Wearing what looked like a dark suit. No face, no eyes. Nothing where a face should have been. I stared at the screen long enough for my reflection to show in it. And for 1 second, when the black parts of the footage caught the room behind me, I thought I saw someone standing in my bedroom doorway. I spun around so fast my chair tipped over. Nothing was there. But from that night on, every bad thing that happened started with something almost small enough to ignore. And the worst part? We still uploaded the teaser. Because at 17, fear and excitement can feel almost exactly the same. Part 2. The footage nobody could explain. By Monday morning, the teaser had more views than anything I'd ever posted. Not a viral number, not life-changing, but enough for people at school to mention it in the hallway. Enough for comments to start piling up from strangers arguing over whether the figure in the footage was edited in. Enough for me to feel that dangerous little rush that comes when something you touched starts spreading without you. At Black Ridge High, that kind of thing mattered for about 6 hours. Then football practice, gossip, and whatever relationship had just exploded over the weekend took over. But for us, it didn't fade. Because the longer we looked at the footage, the less explainable it got. At lunch, we sat at the far edge of the cafeteria near the vending machines, where the noise from everyone else blurred into one constant metallic roar. Noah kept insisting it was probably some local guy messing with us. Mason said maybe the camera had stitched frames together weird. Kylie kept replaying the audio through earbuds and pausing every time the static hit. "There's another sound under it," she said. "What sound?" Noah asked. "I don't know. Like, layered voices. Or breathing." Mason forced a laugh. "Cool, hate that." I took my phone back and watched the clip again. In the full-speed version, the figure only lasted a fraction of a second. You could miss it if you blinked. But slowed down, it was obvious something was there. Too vertical, too thin, standing with its arms hanging farther than a person's arms should reach. "It's probably a tree," Noah said. "It's wearing a tie," Kylie said. That shut him up for a second. The comments online got worse by the hour. Some people called it fake, some told us to go back. Some started posting the same symbol we'd seen painted in the rec hall. One account with no profile picture commented only once, "You saw him clearly enough that he sees you now." No punctuation, no emoji, nothing else. I deleted it. Then I checked later and it was back. Same words. Same blank account. I blocked it. An hour later, there was another comment from a different blank account, "Don't go near the trail marker." I didn't tell the others right away. That afternoon, Mason texted the group chat a photo of his notebook from chemistry. He'd opened it and found 3 pages filled with dark, looping sketches. Trees, a faceless head. Long arms. He swore he hadn't drawn them. Noah immediately said Mason was messing with us. Mason didn't answer for 8 minutes, which for him was strange. Then, he sent, "I'm not joking." Kylie called him. No answer. By the time school ended, all of this still felt, somehow, like it could be contained inside ordinary explanations. Stress, suggestion. Too much horror content. Teenage group paranoia. That was the story we wanted. The version where we'd spooked ourselves and then fed off each other until everything looked sinister. That version died that night. I was in my room editing, the house quiet except for the dryer downstairs and the sound of a TV my mother had fallen asleep to. My window faced the backyard and, beyond that, a slope of bare trees stretching down toward a creek. Suburban lots on either side. Deck furniture covered for the season. Motion lights, fences. Safe, normal American neighborhood stuff that makes you feel like the world is organized. Around 11:40, my camera file froze again. Same white flash, same burst of static. Same drop in temperature that I told myself was just the vent kicking on. I backed out of the editing software and noticed a new video file in the folder. Untitled. No timestamp. No data size that made sense. I didn't click it at first. I just stared at it, because I knew every file I transferred. I knew what I had shot. This was not one of them. When I finally opened it, the screen showed dark woods under a weak gray sky, as if filmed right before sunrise. The camera angle was low and moving fast, weaving between trees like someone was walking and trying not to fall. I listened for voices, footsteps, anything that might tell me who was behind it. Nothing. Then the view broke into a clearing, and there, maybe 40 yards ahead, stood the back of a child in a light-colored hoodie. The child didn't move, the camera moved closer, closer, then jerked sharply to the left as if whoever was holding it had seen something they weren't supposed to. For 2 frames, only 2, a tall figure stood between the trees, impossibly narrow, perfectly still. The video ended there, no metadata, no source. Just a black screen reflecting my face. I shut the laptop so hard I nearly cracked it. My phone buzzed in my hand. Mason. When I answered, he didn't say hello, he said, "Did you put something outside my house?" What? Somebody's in my yard. I stood up so fast my chair rolled backward into the wall. Call your dad. He's on night shift. My mom's at my aunt's place, I'm alone. His voice sounded wrong. Tight, shaky, but quieter than panic should have been. What do you mean, somebody's in your yard? I can see them from the kitchen window. A silence, then, it's too tall. I didn't know what to say to that. Not because I believed him immediately, because some part of me had already been waiting to hear exactly those words. Turn every light on, I said. Lock the doors. They are locked. Then call 911. He didn't answer. Mason. Another silence. Then I heard his breathing change. He moved. My throat went dry. Mason. He wasn't moving before. Stop looking at him, no response. Then, in a whisper so thin I almost didn't catch it, he said. Evan, he's closer to the house now. The line filled with static. Not dropped call static. Not bad signal crackling. A dense, rushing electronic hiss that swallowed my voice when I tried to yell his name. Then the call ended. I called back 4 times, no answer. I texted Noah and Kylie and drove there before my mother even realized I'd left. Mason lived out near the edge of town in one of those developments that had started as farmland and ended as neat houses with white vinyl siding and basketball hoops over garages. When I pulled up, Noah was already there, his truck parked at an angle like he hadn't bothered with the driveway. Kylie came 30 seconds later. The porch light was on, the front door was open, Mason was in the kitchen, pale and furious and embarrassed all at once. There was nobody there, Noah said before I could ask. Mason snapped, there was. His eyes were bloodshot like he hadn't slept in days. His notebook lay open on the kitchen counter beside a half-empty sports drink. Every page was covered now. Trees, suits, tall figures with blacked-out faces. Some of the drawings were pressed so hard the pen had nearly torn through the paper. Kylie turned pages carefully. Did you do all these tonight? I don't know. Noah rolled his eyes, but not convincingly. Come on, man. Mason slammed a hand on the counter. I said I don't know. That shut all of us up. He looked terrible. The kind of terrible you can't fake for effect because it isn't dramatic enough. Just drained, confused. Frayed around the edges. I went to take trash out, he said after a moment. I looked toward the tree line by the retention pond. There was something standing there. I thought it was a pole at first. Or somebody messing with me, but then it was closer. He swallowed. I came back inside, and every time I looked through a different window, it was somewhere else. Nobody joked after that. Kylie asked to see his security camera app. There were 2 outdoor cameras, one over the garage and one covering the backyard. Both had recorded uninterrupted footage all evening. Neither showed anyone in the yard. But each clip had a patch of static at the exact times Mason said he had seen something. The static didn't spread over the whole frame, it covered only the area near the tree line. Like the camera was refusing to look there. Noah still tried to rationalize it. Bad Wi-Fi, cheap camera hardware, motion detection errors. He sounded like he was trying to convince himself more than us. I didn't tell them about the mysterious file on my laptop until later that night, after we'd all agreed, stupidly, pointlessly, to stay on a group call when we got home. When I finally played it for them over screen share, nobody spoke for a long time. Then Kylie said, that child in the video, is that from the camp? No. Did you shoot it? No. Noah leaned into his webcam. Then who did? That question sat in the air like something alive. I started sleeping with my lamp on after that. It didn't help, because once you start watching for something, you begin noticing all the spaces where it could be. Tree lines behind chain-link fences, the far end of school parking lots at dusk, reflections in convenience store glass, the hallway outside your bedroom when the rest of the house is dark. Empty patches in photos where your eye suddenly insists a shape is standing just beyond what makes sense. 3 days after the camp, the town's old rumor stopped feeling like internet horror and started feeling local. At the Blackridge Public Library, tucked between a laundromat and a pizza place that sold sheet slices to construction crews by the tray, Kylie found a newspaper clipping on microfilm from 1998. Search continues for missing camper near Cedar Glen. The article was small. Barely half a column. A boy from Scranton had disappeared during an overnight program. No body recovered. Officials believed he had wandered from camp boundaries and become disoriented. At the bottom of the article was a grainy photo of the search team near the tree line. In the background, far enough away that it could have been dismissed as blur, stood a tall figure among the trees. Noah said it was nothing. Then Kylie found another clipping from 1983. Different child, different wording, same area. And another from 1971, different decade, same woods. Same careful, blank language adults use when they want tragedy to sound administrative. By then, even Noah had stopped smiling much. That afternoon in school, I caught Mason staring out a second-floor classroom window during study hall. Not casual staring, fixed staring. So still it made the back of my neck tighten. I followed his line of sight to the far baseball field beyond the parking lot, where the chain-link fence met the woods. Something dark stood just inside the trees. I blinked, it was gone. When I looked back at Mason, he said, without turning his head, he wants us to come back. I should have told a teacher. I should have told my mom. I should have smashed the camera, deleted the files, and acted like none of it had ever happened. Instead, that night, I opened the project folder again, because fear had turned into obsession. And because by then, I already understood the worst rule of all, the more attention you give him, the clearer he becomes. And once he becomes clear, he doesn't stay in the woods.
Part 3. The town that pretended not to remember.
There's a certain kind of lie small towns tell better than cities do. Not the loud kind. Not the dramatic kind, the quiet kind, the kind built out of pauses, changed subjects, looks between adults, old stories filed under best not to bring that up. Blackridge had that kind of lie in its bones, you could feel it once you knew to look. I started with the library because it was the only place in town where old things were still allowed to sit in plain sight. Miss Donnelly, who had worked the front desk longer than I've been alive, watched me feed reels through the microfilm machine and kept pretending not to notice the articles I was printing. She wore reading glasses on a beaded chain and always smelled faintly like peppermint and dust. When I brought the stack to the counter, she glanced at the headlines and her face changed in a way adults think teenagers don't catch. "Doing a history project?" she asked. "Something like that." She tapped the papers into a neat pile. "Those old camp stories upset people. Because of the missing kids. Because people lose perspective." She slid the pages back to me. "Places get reputations, then every accident starts feeling connected. Do you think they weren't connected?" Her smile was polite and immediate and completely false. "I think old tragedies get turned into legends when people get bored." That was the end of the conversation, at least on the surface. But as I turned away, she said, without looking up again, "If you're going near the old camp, don't stay after dark." I stopped walking. When I turned back, she was stamping due dates like she hadn't said anything at all. That afternoon, Kylie and I went through town records online, then offline when the online files got too incomplete to matter. We sat in her garage with laptops open on a folding table while her little brother shot hoops in the driveway and country music drifted from a neighbor's yard. It was one of those weirdly warm fall evenings where the sky stayed orange too long and everything felt too normal for the things we were reading. There were patterns. Not proof in the courtroom sense, not enough to convince somebody who didn't want convincing, but patterns. Missing persons near wooded areas. Reports dismissed as exposure, animal attacks, runaways. Equipment malfunctions during searches. Witnesses changing statements. An unusual number of people moving out of town within a year of certain incidents. And threaded through all of it, unofficially, in forum posts and archived message boards and blog entries no one had updated in years, was the same name, Slender Man. Sometimes, the Tall Man. Sometimes, the Pines Man. Sometimes, just him. Most of the posts were obvious fiction, roleplay, urban legend remixing, burly internet stuff written by people who wanted to scare each other at 2 a.m. But a few were different. Less polished. Less interested in sounding dramatic. Posts from local accounts that disappeared after one entry, comments from people describing camera problems, nosebleeds, memory loss, the sense of being watched from far away. Kylie pointed at one archive thread from 2009. "Read this one." The username was BRIDGEPARENT84. The post said, "My daughter keeps drawing a very tall man in the trees behind the school playground. She says her teacher told the class not to talk about the old stories because they scare parents. Why would a teacher say that if it was nothing?" No replies. Account deleted. Noah still wouldn't fully commit to believing, but he stopped mocking us. That was the closest thing to surrender he knew how to do. He said if this was local hysteria, then somebody had been feeding it for generations. If it wasn't hysteria, he didn't want to finish the sentence. Mason stopped coming to school. At first his mom said he had the flu. Then he wasn't answering texts. Then he sent one message to the group chat at 2:14 in the morning. "Don't let him in if he looks like me." No emoji. No explanation. I called immediately. Straight to voicemail. The next day, Noah and I drove to his house after class. His blinds were shut. His car was in the driveway, though he didn't drive. His mother answered the door, looking exhausted enough that I almost felt bad for showing up unannounced.
He's sleeping, she said. It's 4 in the afternoon, Noah said. She looked past us, like she expected someone else to be standing there too. He hasn't been himself. I asked if we could just say hi. For a second, I thought she would let us in. Then something changed in her expression. Fear, maybe, or shame, and she said no. As the door started to close, I heard movement upstairs. Not footsteps, more like furniture dragging lightly across a floor. Back in the truck, Noah said. Something's wrong in that house. That night, Kylie found the name of a retired county sheriff's deputy in an old article about one of the Cedar Glen searches. Walter Givens. He still lived outside town. We told ourselves we were just going to ask about historical records. That was the lie we used to justify driving there. Walter Givens lived in a ranch house with a detached garage and a flagpole in the yard. The kind of place that smelled like cold metal and motor oil before you even got out of the car. He opened the door, wearing a flannel shirt and the guarded expression of a man who had spent years being lied to professionally. He was halfway through telling us he didn't talk to kids making ghost videos when Kylie showed him one of the printed newspaper photos. He stared at it for a long time. Then he stepped aside. His living room walls held old framed hunting photos and service plaques. There was a Browns game on mute in the background. A bowl of hard candy sat untouched on the table. Normal details. Grounding details.
The kind you notice when you're waiting for an adult to either laugh at you or finally say something real. Givens set the photo down and said, "I never liked that camp." Noah leaned forward. Because of the disappearances, because of what happened around them. He didn't say Slender Man, not at first. Men his age from towns like ours didn't like using names that sounded like internet fiction. It made them feel ridiculous, which was another way fear protected itself. He told us about search teams getting separated when they shouldn't have, officers reporting radio interference in places where there should have been none. Parents insisting their children had described the tall man in the woods before they vanished, then refusing to repeat it later. One volunteer who walked out of the tree line at dawn barefoot and bloodless-faced, saying she had spent all night following a child's voice that stayed the same distance ahead of her no matter how fast she ran. "You're saying there was something out there," I said. He gave me a long look. "I'm saying people around here used to know better than to talk about it like it was entertainment." That landed where it was meant to. Kylie asked him if he thought the cases were connected. He exhaled through his nose. Connected isn't the word. He looked toward the dark TV screen, seeing something older than the room. It was more like, once one family got touched by it, the whole town adjusted around them. Teachers stopped asking questions, churches changed the language at funerals. Cops write reports that feel cleaner than the truth. Parents teach kids which trails not to use, but they never explain why. Everybody thinks silence will starve it, does it? No, he said. It just makes it harder to recognize when it comes back. Then he finally asked to see our footage. When the frame with the figure outside the cabin appeared, Givens stood up so fast his recliner kicked backward. He didn't say a word for several seconds. His face looked old in a new way, like fear had reached inside him, and found the version of himself he used to be. "I thought this was over," he said quietly. "Over?" Noah repeated. Givens rubbed a hand across his mouth. "It comes in waves. Years apart, sometimes. Then something starts it up again. A sighting. A disappearance. Kids daring each other into the woods." He pointed at the screen without touching it. "You see him clearly enough, he starts making room for himself in your life." I asked him the question that had been sitting underneath everything. "What is he?" He looked at me like I was too young to understand why the question itself was wrong. "Not a person," he said. "Not a ghost, either, more like a shape that gets stronger when enough fear points in the same direction." That sounded impossible, and somehow, it also sounded closer to the truth than anything else we'd heard. Before we left, he told us not to go back to Cedar Glen. Not for footage. Not for friends. Not for answers. "If one of your friends starts acting wrong," he said, "don't follow them into the trees. I asked him why. He said, because sometimes, it learns what you trust. When we drove back, night had settled over Blackridge completely, porch lights glowed, the football field lights in the distance lit up the sky over the school. A line of cars waited at the diner drive-thru, everything looked so ordinary I almost hated it. Then my phone buzzed. Mason had sent a video. No text, just the file. I opened it before I could stop myself. It was filmed in near darkness, inside his bedroom. The only light came from his desk lamp tipped sideways on the floor. The camera pointed toward his closet door, which stood slightly open. For 10 full seconds, nothing happened. Then a voice behind the camera whispered, "He keeps standing where corners meet." Mason's voice. The closet door moved wider. Not violently, slowly. And in the darkness inside there was someone standing farther back than the closet should have gone. Too tall to fit. The video ended with Mason gasping and dropping the phone. I called him. No answer. Noah called, nothing. Kylie texted his mom, no response. By the time we reached his street, police lights were already washing blue and red across the houses. Neighbors stood outside in pajama pants and jackets, pretending not to listen while absolutely listening. 2 officers were at the front door. Mason's mother was crying into her hand. Noah parked half on the curb. We ran over before good sense caught up. An officer blocked us immediately. "Family only. What happened?" I asked. The officer didn't answer, but I saw enough over his shoulder. Mason's bedroom window was open, screen torn out from the inside. The woods beyond the backyard looked black and endless. His mother saw us then and made a sound I'll never forget. Not a scream, not exactly, just the sound of a person realizing the world has become a thing she can no longer control. "They can't find him," she said. I don't remember who pulled her back inside. I do remember this, on the edge of the yard, beyond the reach of the police lights, where the retention pond met the tree line, something tall stood in the dark. Just for a second, then the static hit the nearest cruiser camera mounted on the dash. And when the image cleared, it was gone. That was the night Blackridge stopped feeling like my hometown. It became a place with a mouth. And something in the woods had started opening it again. Part 4. He only gets closer when you notice him. After Mason disappeared, the town did what towns like ours always do. It split into 2 realities. In the first reality, the public one, everyone became practical. Flyers went up at the grocery store, the post office, the gas station by Route 11, the school counselor made announcements about support services. Teachers spoke with that careful, softened tone adults use when they're trying not to trigger panic. There were volunteer search teams, prayer circles, casseroles delivered to Mason's mother, updates from the sheriff's office that said they were pursuing all leads. In the second reality, the real one, everybody started watching the woods. Nobody said Slender Man out loud in the school hallways. But kids whispered about the video from our channel. About the old newspaper clippings, about Mason's drawings, about whether he'd sleepwalked into the forest, about whether somebody had taken him. And because people were thinking about it, noticing it, feeding it with fear and attention, it kept showing up. Not openly. Never like that. It stayed at the edge of things, the first time I saw him in daylight. I was walking from the student lot to the school entrance with a coffee. I definitely shouldn't have been drinking on an empty stomach. The morning was cold enough to sting my ears, buses were unloading, teachers in quarter zips were directing traffic like every weekday in America required low-level emergency management. And beyond the baseball field, by the chain-link fence near the woods, a tall dark figure stood absolutely still. Too far away for details, too wrong to be a person. I stopped dead in the crosswalk. A car honked behind me. When I looked again, he was gone. I spent the whole day, trying not to look out windows. That only made me aware of every window in the building. Classroom glass. Trophy case reflections. Dark laptop screens in media lab, the mirror over the sink in the boys' bathroom that made the stall doors behind you seem farther away than they should have been. At lunch, Kylie said she hadn't slept more than 3 hours in 2 nights. "He's not in my room," she said quietly, "but every time I turn off a screen, I think he's going to be in the reflection." Noah was worse in his own way. He was angry. Angry at the police, angry at Mason for vanishing. Angry at us for acting like old stories might be real. Angry, maybe, because he had started believing and didn't know how to survive that without becoming a different person. "This is how urban legends work," he said, jabbing a finger at the table. "One person disappears and everybody starts connecting dots that aren't there." "And the footage?" Kylie asked. "And the cameras," I said. "And Mason sending us a video from his room," she added. Noah looked at me. "You want me to say a faceless guy from the internet walked into Blackridge and took our friend?" I didn't answer. Because what I wanted was worse. I wanted it to make sense. That Friday night, Blackridge played away, so the town funneled into bars, living rooms, and the diner instead of the stadium. My mother worked late, which left the house quiet except for the refrigerator hum and the occasional thud from pipes settling in the walls. Quiet used to be comforting. After Cedar Glen, quiet felt like space being made for something else. Around 9:30, the power flickered. Once, twice, then stayed on. I checked my phone out of reflex. Group chat silent. No new updates from the sheriff's department, no messages from Mason. Of course not. My laptop woke on its own. I hadn't touched it. The screen glowed in the dark room with the project timeline still open. Across the audio track, where there shouldn't have been anything except one of Noah's jokes from the camp parking lot, a new sound wave had appeared, thin, jagged, almost hidden. I hit play. At first I heard only our own voices from that night, muffled by wind, then underneath them, barely audible, came a whispering rush like leaves dragged across pavement. I increased the volume. The sound sharpened, not one whisper, many, layered. Too distorted to make out words, but deliberate enough that language had once lived inside them. Then, beneath all of it, a child's voice said very clearly, "Find me at Hollow Trail." The audio cut off. I sat frozen in my chair so long my legs started to hurt. Then someone knocked 3 times on the back window. Not the front door, not the side of the house. The back window. 3 measured taps. I didn't move. The taps came again. I wish I could tell you I was brave. That I grabbed a flashlight, marched outside, demanded answers from the dark. I didn't. I stayed in my chair, staring at the black window over my desk, where the glass had turned into a mirror. For a few seconds, all I could see was my own room reflected back at me. Then the shape behind me became visible. Tall, still. Standing in the hallway, outside my bedroom. I spun around. Nothing. When I looked back at the window, the reflection was only my room again. And from outside, far off toward the creek, came that same radio-like hiss from the camp. The next day, Kylie came over with printed maps of the game lands outside town and every archived reference she'd found to Hollow Trail. It wasn't an official path anymore. Maybe never had been. But the name showed up in old camp newsletters, search records, and one church bulletin from 1978 asking families to avoid the hollow side trails north of Cedar Glen. "This place keeps surfacing," she said, spreading papers across our kitchen table while my mother was out running errands. If Mason's message wasn't random. "No," I said immediately. "No what?" "No going out there because a voice on my laptop told us to." She held my stare. What if that wasn't for us? That thought hit harder than the first one. What if it was Mason? What if it was bait? What if those two things were no longer different? Noah arrived 20 minutes later already in a bad mood, which had become his default state. He looked like he hadn't slept either. He also had a nosebleed he kept pretending wasn't happening, until Kylie shoved paper towels at him. "You seen things too?" she asked. He took the towels, annoyed. Everyone's seen things. That wasn't an answer. He finally admitted the figure had appeared at the far end of the visitor parking lot after practice the night before, standing under the dead stadium lights near the equipment shed. When Noah blinked, it was gone.
When he checked his phone camera, the video from that moment was all static. Kylie said, "It's getting closer." Noah snapped, "Stop saying it like it's a person." I said, "Then what is it?" For once, he had nothing. By then, Blackridge had started doing something else towns do when fear gets too close. It turned on the people who named it. Our teaser and follow-up clip were being shared in local groups with comments calling us reckless, attention-seeking, sick for using a disappearance to get views. Parents complained to the school. Someone spray-painted "liars" on the wall behind the baseball bleachers. Givens called me from a blocked number that evening. "How bad is it?" he asked. I didn't bother pretending not to know what he meant. "It's not staying in the woods." A long silence. Then it's not attached just to the place anymore. "It's attached to one of you." My stomach dropped. "Which one?" If I knew that, I would have told you not to ask the question. He told me to gather everything. Footage, files, sketches, maps. Then he said if we were going to do something stupid, at least do it before the town's fear had time to grow roots. That was his phrase, grow roots. Like whatever had come back needed a community to hold it in place. I asked if there was a way to stop it. He said, not stop, break the pattern maybe. Sometimes. How? He took too long to answer. By refusing to follow the shape it offers you. That made no sense at the time. By midnight, I understood it a little better. I woke to my phone buzzing on the floor beside the bed. No caller ID. Just static when I answered, then Mason's voice, very calm, "Evan. Come outside." I sat upright so fast my blanket hit the floor. "Mason. You can see me from the front yard." The line crackled. I went to the window before I could stop myself. Our front lawn glowed silver under the streetlight. Across the road, mailboxes, parked cars, trimmed hedges. Middle-class suburban normality laid out like a safety blanket. At the far end of the sidewalk, under the dead oak near the corner, someone stood facing my house. Too tall. Not moving. "Mason." I whispered into the phone. The voice answered, exactly the same as before, "Come outside." Then the figure at the corner lifted one arm, not waving, pointing. Toward the street leading out of the neighborhood, toward the road to the woods. I dropped the phone. When I looked again, the figure was gone. But my phone screen was still lit. The call hadn't ended. And from the speaker, in a whisper no longer even pretending to sound like Mason, came the words, "He's waiting at Hollow Trail." That was the moment I stopped believing we could outwait it. Because he wasn't hunting at random anymore. He was arranging us. Part 5. Back to the woods. We met the next evening in the church parking lot because none of us wanted to use our houses anymore. That probably sounds dramatic if you've never been afraid of your own windows, but by then, homes didn't feel private, they felt observed. Every dark pane of glass felt like an invitation for something to stand just beyond it. The church, with its floodlights and brick walls and silent fellowship hall, seemed safer in a symbolic way none of us were willing to admit out loud. It was me, Kylie, Noah, and Walter Givens. Givens had brought a flashlight the size of a baton, an old revolver I doubted would help against anything we were dealing with, and the expression of a man who already regretted not stopping us harder. Noah had a hunting knife he kept checking, like he needed to feel the weight of something real. Kylie had our printed maps, Mason's notebook photos, and a backpack full of batteries and first aid supplies. I had the camera, because at some point the need to document had become impossible to separate from the need to survive. "Leave the camera in the car," Givens said. "I can't." He looked at me for a second and then gave up, which told me he understood more than I wanted him to. The road to Cedar Glen felt shorter this time, maybe because we were no longer pretending we had another destination. No jokes in the truck, no music. Just dashboard light and bad breaths. When we passed the broken camp sign, Noah muttered, "Still feels insane we're doing this." "Then stay in the truck," Kylie said. He didn't. We reached the old camp just after sunset. The sky still held a strip of dark orange behind the trees, but under the pines it was already night. Flooded leaves made the ground soft and slick. Every cabin seemed more collapsed than before, as if time moved faster out there. The first thing we noticed was that the symbols had multiplied. On walls, on doors, on the chapel floor, on the side of the old water tower. Some looked fresh.
Kids, Noah said automatically. Nobody responded. Givens led us past the rec hall and deeper into the property toward the north side, where the camp paths narrowed and the trees grew so tightly together the flashlight beams broke apart against them. Somewhere beyond the main grounds, water dripped steadily, though there hadn't been rain. Hollow Trail, according to the old maps, branched off near an unused archery field and curved around a low depression in the woods. We found the trail marker hanging from one bent post. No official sign, just a hand-painted board, weathered almost white, with hollow, barely readable under years of rot. The moment my light hit it, the camera audio crackled. Kylie whispered, "Did you hear that?" I had. Branches moving, except there was no wind. Givens turned back to us. "From here on, stay close and don't follow voices." Noah let out a short, humorless laugh. "You say that like it's a thing that happens." Givens looked at him. "It is." The trail dipped lower almost immediately. The air changed there, colder, yes, but heavier too, as if the woods in that section held sound differently. Our footsteps seemed quieter, our breathing seemed louder. I kept expecting to see the beam from somebody's flashlight catch a deer, a fox, any normal living thing. Nothing. Then we found the playground. I hadn't known there had ever been one this far from camp. Maybe it belonged to some later expansion that never got finished. Maybe it had been there all along, and most people just never made it far enough to see it. A rusted swing set leaned sideways in a clearing choked by weeds. One chain moved slightly. A slide led down into dead leaves. The whole place looked like something memory had abandoned halfway through. Under the swing set lay children's shoes. Not a pile, not arranged. Just scattered. Old and new, rain boots, one tiny sneaker. A faded canvas shoe with cartoon stars. Kylie stopped breathing for a second. "Oh my God." Noah said, "No." Over and over, like the word could reverse what he was seeing. Givens didn't step into the clearing. "Keep moving." That was when we heard Mason. Not vague, not maybe, Mason. From somewhere ahead and to the left. "Evan." I turned instantly. Givens grabbed my shoulder so hard it hurt. "Don't." That was him. "I know. Mason," Noah shouted. The voice came again, closer now, strained and desperate. "I'm over here." The trees to our left seemed to open into a darker passage. Every instinct in my body wanted to run toward it. Kylie's fingers locked around my sleeve. "Don't do it, Mason," Noah yelled again. This time the answer came from behind us. Then from farther ahead, then from somewhere off to the right. The same voice, same panic, same exact tone, not an echo, a copy. Noah went pale in the flashlight glare. Givens said, very quietly, "It's learning faster this time." Then the static started. All at once, every electronic thing we had, my camera, Kylie's spare phone, Noah's phone in his jacket pocket erupted in the same tearing hiss. The flashlight beams flickered, my camera screen filled with digital grain. In the middle of it, for a fraction of a second, I saw a frame that was not live video. A child standing with back turned. A clearing, a tall black shape behind the child. The screen went normal again, and at the far end of the trail, between the trunks, he stood. No movement, no sound. Just height. He was farther than he had ever been from me in dreams and much closer than he had ever been in real life. Tall enough to seem wrong even with no object beside him for scale, wearing something dark and formal, as if a businessman had been stretched by bad physics until human proportion gave up. His arms hung too low. His head was smooth and pale in the dark. No face, none. I couldn't breathe for a second, not from shock. From the physical wrongness of seeing something my brain could not comfortably categorize. Noah whispered, "Run," but Givens said, "No, slow, back up slow." The figure did not move. We began stepping backward as one unit, feet slipping in leaves, lights shaking. I kept the camera on him because I couldn't stop myself. Each second he remained motionless made the fear worse. Motion would have meant intention, stillness meant patience. Then something crashed through the trees behind us. Noah spun and shouted. A person stumbled into the trail and collapsed to their knees, Mason, or something that looked like Mason. He was dirty, breathing hard, eyes wide and ringed dark like he hadn't slept in a week. For one glorious, stupid second, relief hit so hard I almost started crying. Then Givens raised his flashlight and said, "Don't touch him." Mason looked up. "What are you doing?" "Help me." Noah took a step forward. "Mason, don't," Givens barked. Mason's face twisted. "Please," Kylie whispered, "how did he get behind us?" That was the question. Because Slender Man was still standing ahead on the trail, motionless, watching. And Mason had come from behind. Two impossible things at once. I lifted the camera by instinct and zoomed in on Mason's face. He looked right into the lens. For half a second, the image glitched, his features elongated. Not in reality, maybe only in the digital artifact, but enough to show something underneath the shape of him. Then it snapped back. Noah saw it too. I know he did because he made a sound like the floor had dropped out under him. Mason started crying. "Please, don't leave me here," Givens said, voice hard now, "ask him what we used to call the old bridge by the creek." Noah looked confused. I understood, first. A test, something only Mason would know. I said it aloud. "What did we call the bridge by Miller's Creek when we were kids?" Mason stared. Not blankly, too carefully. Then he said, "I don't remember." Noah's whole face broke. Because we all remembered. Everybody in Blackridge, our age, called it the Dare Bridge. Mason knew that. Whatever was kneeling in the trail, did not. Its crying stopped immediately, not tapered off, stopped. The expression stayed on its face for a second longer than it should have, like an actor missing a cue. Then both lights hit it at once, and it smiled, too wide. Noah shouted something I didn't understand. Givens fired. The gunshot shattered the woods so violently I felt it in my chest. Birds exploded upward from unseen branches. The thing wearing Mason's shape flinched backward into the dark, but not like a person hit by a bullet. More like an image distorting when the signal breaks. Then every light went out. Total dark. For 2 seconds, maybe 3, the only sound was static and leaves under scrambling feet. Someone grabbed my arm, Kylie. Someone else yelled my name, Noah or Givens, I couldn't tell. Then the flashlight clicked back on, weak and shaking. The trail ahead was empty. The trail behind was empty. Mason was gone. The figure was gone. Givens was gone. We called for him. No answer. Just, far away through the trees, the sound of 3 knocks. Noah wanted to run, blind. Kylie wanted to go back. I stood there shaking and understood, suddenly, what Givens had meant by refusing the shape it offers you. It wasn't just pretending to be what you feared, it was pretending to be what you needed. A missing friend. A voice asking for help. A final chance to make things right. The woods around Hollow Trail were full of traps that didn't look like traps until you stepped toward them. And then I saw something hanging from a low branch. Givens's flashlight. Still on. Swinging. Beneath it, tied with red fabric, was one of Mason's bracelets from the summer. A trail. An invitation. A shape being offered. Noah said, "We have to follow it." Kylie said, "That's exactly what it wants." And I knew she was right. But I also knew this wasn't over until one of us either disappeared or made it out with the truth. So, I lifted the camera again, pointed it into the black trees, and said the only thing left to say. Then we stopped following the voice. And for the first time since this started, we chose our own direction. Part 6, the last recording. We did not follow the hanging flashlight. That decision probably saved our lives, or at least changed the order in which things came for us. Instead, Kylie unfolded the old photocopied camp map under the weak beam of her remaining flashlight and found the contour line she'd marked earlier, a shallow depression north of Hollow Trail, near what had once been labeled a lookout platform. If the trail was designed to pull people through the most isolated parts of the woods, then the place anchoring it had to be somewhere it could watch paths converge. Noah didn't argue anymore. That was how scared he was. We moved uphill through brush and dead leaves, forcing our way between trunks instead of following anything that felt prepared for us. Branches clawed our jackets, roots caught our boots. Twice I thought I heard footsteps matching ours a few yards off to the side, but every time I swung the camera there was only static and black trees. Then we reached the tower. Or what was left of it. It rose out of the hill like the ribs of something dead, a wooden observation platform from the camp's early days, half collapsed, stairs broken off on one side, railing splintered and sinking into the earth. Beneath it, the ground opened into a shallow bowl-shaped clearing ringed with stones. The air there felt dead still, sealed off from the rest of the forest. And in the clearing were photographs. Hundreds of them, pinned to trunks, tucked under stones, nailed to boards, scattered across the dirt. Some were new, glossy drugstore prints. Some were old Polaroids. Some looked decades old. Children at playgrounds, families at church picnics, school portraits, cabin snapshots, search parties, birthday parties, football games. Black Ridge, over and over, across generations. I knew before I found him that Mason would be in one of them. He was. A photo from sophomore year at the county fair. Me, Noah, Mason, Kylie, all four of us holding lemonades, and making stupid faces for the camera. Pinned, dead center to the tower post. My hands went numb. Next to it was an even older photo, maybe late 90s, of a different group of teenagers in front of the same camp sign we had filmed. One of them had a symbol drawn over his face in black marker. Below that, another. Then another. I understood then that this wasn't random haunting. It was collection, pattern, selection. Not feeding on fear alone, maybe, but on being remembered. Rephotographed, reintroduced into the town every time someone looked too long and carried the image back with them. Kylie said, "It marks groups." Noah stared at the photos, with his mouth slightly open. For what? Nobody answered, because none of us wanted to. At the center of the clearing stood a child-sized chair facing the tower. On the seat lay my camera's missing battery. The one I had never lost. The one that had vanished from my desk drawer the morning after the camp. That was impossible enough to make me laugh once a sharp broken sound I barely recognized as mine. Then the woods around us began whispering. Not metaphorically, actually whispering. Low, layered voices rising from every direction, too soft to isolate, too many to belong to real people. The same sound from the audio track, only now surrounding us physically. Names seemed to emerge and dissolve inside it. Pleading, calling, warning. The camera screen flared white. When it cleared, it wasn't showing live video, it was showing me, a few seconds in the future. Standing in the clearing alone. Kylie and Noah gone, the tower behind me. Something tall unfolding itself from the dark beneath it. I almost dropped the camera. "Evan?" Kylie said. I couldn't explain what I'd seen before Noah shouted, "There." At the edge of the clearing, between two trees, Mason stood. Real this time. At least, I think he was real. He looked wrecked. Mud on his clothes. One shoe missing, face hollow with exhaustion. But his eyes were his eyes. Human. Terrified. Not blank, not careful, truly terrified. "Don't come closer," he said. Noah moved instantly anyway. Mason backed up. "Noah, stop." That voice saved him, I think, not because it proved he was real, because it contained the right fear. The fear of someone who knows closeness has become dangerous. Kylie held Noah back with both hands. "Listen to him." Mason was shaking. "He uses the parts of you that people trust. If you look too long, he can wear your outline. He can't stay close for long unless you let him be seen through you." The whispering around us intensified. Noah yelled, "What does that even mean?" Mason looked at me. "The camera." I felt every muscle lock. "What about it?" "He wants the camera." Of course he did. Because the camera made memory portable. Because video made sightings repeatable. Because every replay was another act of attention. Because every upload turned local fear into something larger. Mason took a staggered breath. I tried not to look, I tried not to listen. But every time I thought about home, he showed me one of you. Every time I tried to leave, he gave me a voice to follow. The only thing he kept coming back for was the camera. Then he pointed above us. I looked. Under the broken roofline of the tower, almost hidden in the shadow where support beams crossed, something pale hung motionless. A face-shaped emptiness. Then the rest of him became visible around it, as if my eyes had to surrender piece by piece before the full shape was allowed to exist. He was folded into the architecture of the tower, too tall for it, limbs gathered at impossible angles, black suit blending with rot and shadow until you noticed the proportions and realized no human body could hold itself like that. No movement, just presence. Noah made a choking sound. Kylie whispered, "Don't look at him." Too late. The whispering erupted into static, my camera screamed with feedback. Noah dropped to one knee clutching his head. Blood ran from one of his nostrils. Kylie stumbled backward, eyes squeezed shut. Mason covered his ears and shouted something I couldn't hear, and Slender Man began to unfold. Not fast, not pouncing. Just rising with sickening patience, one impossible limb at a time, until he seemed to occupy more vertical space than the clearing should have allowed. The branches above him trembled without wind. The photographs pinned around the clearing rustled all at once. My camera screen flashed with rapid images: children in the woods, school hallways empty at dusk, Mason's room, my own bedroom doorway, the church parking lot, the camp cabin, Blackridge across decades, people vanishing from frames. He wasn't merely haunting places, he was threading himself through moments when someone had already begun to fear him. Mason screamed, "Break it." For 1 second I hesitated. Every instinct I had as a storyteller, as the idiot kid who thought recording things meant controlling them, fought against that command. Break the camera and we lose the proof. Break the camera and maybe no one believes any of this. Break the camera and maybe Mason disappears again, and this time no one even knows why. Then the screen showed my mother opening our front door to a tall shadow standing on the porch. Maybe a lie. Maybe a threat. Maybe a promise. That was enough. I hurled the camera at the tower post as hard as I could. The body cracked. Lens burst, battery compartment flew open. The screen fractured into a web of white light. For the first time, Slender Man moved sharply. The clearing convulsed with static so intense it felt physical. Every pinned photo ripped loose at once and spiraled upward in a cyclone of paper. The whispering became a scream without a mouth to produce it. Noah collapsed fully. Kylie dragged him by the jacket. Mason ran toward us from the tree line, and this time when he grabbed my arm, he felt solid, human, real. Behind us, something massive struck the tower wood. Once. Twice, then came 3 knocks so loud they shook leaves from branches. We ran. No trail. No map. Just downhill and away, crashing through brush while the forest broke into flickers of static light around us. Sometimes the trees looked normal, sometimes they lengthened into black bars. Sometimes I heard footsteps that matched ours exactly, though there were only 4 of us. Once I looked left and saw another version of us running parallel between the trunks, same bodies, same panic, wrong distances, and then they were gone. We didn't stop until we burst through the edge of camp near the old chapel. The truck was still where we left it. Givens was slumped against the passenger side door, breathing, alive, one side of his face cut up and his flashlight missing. No time for explanations. We shoved everyone inside and Noah drove because adrenaline had made him mean and fast in the useful way. Gravel sprayed behind us as we tore down the access road, with headlights bouncing through trees. In the rearview mirror, for one impossible second, a tall shape stood in the middle of the road behind us. Then the mirror filled with static. When we hit pavement, all 4 phones in the truck lit up at once and died. Noah drove all the way back to town without speaking. At the emergency room, we lied. Hiking accident, panic episode. Mason disoriented but alive. Givens fell in the woods. Static in electronics, we didn't mention that part. The nurse looked at us like she knew we were leaving out the core of the story, but also knew she didn't want it. By dawn, Black Ridge looked exactly the same as it always had: school buses, church signs, coffee drive-thrus, American flags on porches, parents scraping frost off windshields. That was the cruelest part. Evil doesn't always make the world look transformed. Sometimes, it leaves the town exactly as it found it, and only changes the people forced to keep living there. Mason survived, though he barely spoke for weeks.
Noah never joked about any of it again. Kylie transferred schools by spring. Givens moved out of county before Christmas. And me? I did the worst possible thing. I rebuilt the video. Not from the destroyed camera, most of that footage was gone, but from backups. Phones, recovered files. The teaser, the clippings, the audio. Enough to make a record. Enough to warn somebody. Enough, maybe, to keep the truth from being buried under the same silence Black Ridge always used. I uploaded it 3 weeks later at 2:03 a.m. The title was simple: The Black Ridge Footage. For the first hour, nothing happened except views. Then the comments began. Some said fake. Some said genius. Some said they had seen the same figure in other towns, other woods, other frames. Then one comment appeared from a blank account with no profile picture. He doesn't stay where he's first seen. He stays where he's remembered. I should have deleted the video then. I should have deleted the channel. Instead, I sat there in the glow of my monitor, watching the numbers climb, listening to my own room settle around me in the dark. And on the black edge of the screen, where the reflection showed the bedroom behind me, I saw someone standing near the door. Tall, still, faceless. Closer than he had ever been in the woods. I didn't turn around. Not immediately. Because by then, I understood the last rule, the one nobody in Black Ridge had ever managed to say plainly. Some things don't need permission to enter your life. They only need to be noticed. And if you've made it this far into my story, if you've pictured the woods, the trail, the photographs, the doorway, the reflection, then maybe you've already noticed him too. So before you replay this, before you pause on any frame, before you check the dark part of your screen behind your own shoulder, ask yourself one question. Was he ever really in my story? Or did this only become yours the moment you believed you saw him?